What a defensive battle in Motown tonight as the Boston Celtics come up just short after they fought and toiled all night long against the number one seed in the Eastern Conference.
The Celtics are sending Drew Holiday to Portland for Anthony Simons and 2 second-round draft picks.
Breaking news out of the association surrounding the Boston Celtics.
The Celtics have traded Kristaps Porzingis to the Atlanta Hawks.
50 for Jaylen Brown. This is Pritchard time. The crowd can sense it. Over 3 Bulls.
Great in and out dribble. Oh! He set off the smoke detector.
What's up, everyone, and welcome in to your Celtics source on this late Monday night after the Boston Celtics fall to the Detroit Pistons 104-103, a game that came down to the buzzer as Jaylen Brown misses the final shot to win the game for the Celtics. And quite frankly, this was just a fantastic matchup all night long. You know, it's a rough loss for the Celtics, but you're going up against the number one seed in the Eastern Conference, one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. And quite frankly, I thought they did a hell of a job. The Celtics could not make a shot all night long. Derrick White struggled mightily in this game. Jaylen Brown was really the only one that had it going for the Celtics besides a few key shots here and there from individual players, but not a consistent run from really anyone in this game. Meanwhile, for Detroit, they struggled as well, right? Given the low score, you know, it makes perfect sense. Both teams were brilliant defensively, but in the end, you know, just a couple just dagger threes from Tobias Harris, one at the top of the key, one in the corner to seal the deal for the Pistons. A great pass from Cade Cunningham after being double-teamed, might have been a triple team. He's able to turn around, kick it back out to the top of the key for just a heartbreaking three from Tobias Harris. But before we talk about this game, I do quickly want to just mention we heard the news earlier today that Jaylen Brown is an all-star starter, much deserved for the first time in his NBA 10-year career. We know the season he's had each and every night, putting up 30 points, 5+ rebounds, 4.5 assists, and just carrying a team without Jason Tatum that would otherwise be sitting at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, no doubt. And I think, you know, we just take it for granted, the fact that we have 2 all-NBA players, you know, for the most part, every single season right now with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And quite frankly, Jason Tatum might be coming back. You look at this game, the Knicks lost tonight, got absolutely obliterated by the Dallas Mavericks. The score is not as close as what the game actually was, or it's not as, it's not as big of a score differential as the game looked. The Mavericks just absolutely destroyed the Knicks on every key margin in that game. You are now, 2 games up on the Knicks. You're now 6.5 games back on the Pistons. And at this point, the Pistons are going to get the 1 seed. But you look at the way they matched up tonight, and you're like, with Jason Tatum back, who's to say this team couldn't make a run at this team, beat them in a 7-game series? The Celtics are easily right now the second best team in the Eastern Conference, and that's without Jason Tatum coming back. And this weekend, we're going to do a full trade deadline preview. That's going to be sort of the episode for this stretch of games here. And right now, my answer is just to stay pat. Doing nothing at the trade deadline, not trading away Anthony Simons, not trading away other key guys, shows this team, at least from an ownership perspective, that you have bought into this team, that you are letting them, play this season out. Brad Stevens and Bill Chisholm could easily get rid of Anthony Simons if they wanted to and trade him away for some just sort of cheap, $5 million, 12th man just to get rid of the contract. But Anthony Simons is playing extremely well right now on both ends of the floor. Derrick White, Peyton Pritchard, obviously those are not trade candidates, but, those two guys have been really struggling as of recently, and Anthony Simons has taken, their place, not in terms of minutes or anything, but in terms of production right now. So, staying pat for this team would be fantastic. Speaking of Jason Tatum, he looked great today warming up in their practice before the game. One-on-one drills with coaches, moving off the dribble, shooting off the dribble. Obviously, he's been doing this for a while now. And, there's probably still many steps that he needs to check off, boxes that he needs to complete. But that being said, we might be only 3 weeks out. That's my guess right now with just how well he's playing. And, there's no doubt he's going to be playing this season. Just the way this team has played this season, the way the season's gone, there's no way I would not bring Jason Tatum back and see if you can make a run in a wide-open Eastern Conference besides the Detroit Pistons, which you've only lost by 1 tonight against. And let's get into this game because it was just a fantastic defensive performance on both ends of the floor. The Celtics held the Pistons to 43% field goal percentage, 38 for 88. The Pistons on the other side held the Celtics to 43%, or nope, to 40%, 33 of 88. The Pistons were 38 of 88 and the Celtics were 33 of 88. But still, just fantastic defense on both ends of the floor. And, it was a physical game. The refs let plays go. They didn't call a lot of, defensive fouls, let guys go to the rim. Pretty contested. Besides that sort of double tech that Jaylen Brown and Isaiah Stewart got early in the game, there wasn't much fighting either, right? Sometimes when they don't call stuff, the game gets chippy and, it starts to get out of hand. It wasn't that. I thought, both teams kept the game under control for the most part. And this game, was really won by the way the Pistons were able to take the Celtics turnovers and turn them into points. Because as I said, both teams couldn't make shots. Early in this game, the Pistons could not make a three to save their lives. And that's been their biggest struggle of the season when they've had struggles. And obviously there haven't been many of them, but when they have had struggles, it's been their three-point shooting. One of the reasons why I think they need to go out and get a three-point shooter. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of three-point shooters in the NBA right now that are like power forward, 3-and-D type players at the wing position, right? That's probably the hardest commodity to find in the NBA right now. But that being said, right, we'll talk about what Duncan Robinson was able to do. He got going later in this game, and helped them, down the stretch in this game. But for the most part, for the first 3 quarters, it was just a back and forth game that the Pistons were able to sneak by and keep their 1 to 2 point lead because of just getting points off of turnovers. Which you look at what the Celtics had in this game. I think they had a total of, if I'm not mistaken, 14 turnovers, which is a considerable amount above their normal turnover ratio. But that being said, right, you're playing one of the best defensive teams in the NBA, a team that loves to turn teams over. So it makes sense that your turnovers were up. Jaylen Brown, he did have 4 turnovers. I didn't think it was a terrible game from Jaylen Brown. Obviously not a great shooting game from him, despite getting to 32 points. But he did a great job, Jaylen Brown did, on the defensive boards as well. We'll talk about Jaylen Brown in just a second. But as I was talking about the Pistons and getting turnovers, that's how they got their points, from turnovers and from second chance opportunities, which, we know this Pistons team, they are, I think, second in the NBA in offensive rebound percentage. They rebound, I think, just over half of their missed shots, which is just a ridiculous rate. To be able to get more than half of your missed shots, you get a second opportunity. That's why the Pistons are so good this season. Yes, they have Cade Cunningham, who is a brilliant All-NBA first team lock for sure, a player that is an all-star starter. But that being said, he is really the only guy that the Pistons have out there offensively. They get most of their points on putback dunks, lobs to Duran, to Ivy, to Stewart, right? They were just towering above the rim in this game. And, the Celtics don't have the size each and every night, especially because Queta and Garza got into foul trouble early in this game. And that really slowed down, or really, hurt the Celtics' ability to get stops and get out in transition. The fact that, they didn't have two centers out there contesting shots at the rim. Duran had some big rebounds, some sort of tip backs against Queta. Stewart as well. He was physical down low. Queta and Stewart spent a lot of time on the ground, tangled up, without calls for the most part. And I love to see it when they call it like that, because then that, while it's unfortunate when a call doesn't go your way, or there isn't a call when you thought you were fouled, the same thing's happening on the other end, and at least the refs are not, messing it up, right? If they do nothing in the game, you can game plan for that, because you have to play physical and go through contact. Whereas they call some things and they don't call other things, it's really hard to game plan. The inconsistency is what Jaylen Brown's complained about over the last couple of weeks, and players complain about, all over the league. All right, that was the first half. The second half, it wasn't like this game turned at any point, because I thought this game was neck and neck, and just as I said at the top of the show, what's his name? Tobias Harris made the one more three to win the game. It wasn't like, the tide changed or anything. It was, this game never got within a gap of more than 8 points, I think. I think the largest was the halftime lead of 59-51 or something like that, so 8 points. And the Celtics start the third nicely. They get off to a fast start and get this game from what was that 8-point margin to a 3-point margin. I don't think they ever took the lead in the second half. Maybe they did. But Luka Garza had some great threes off of the pick and pop, which was open all night long. It was just a matter of the fact of whether the Celtics would make a shot, and for the most part, they didn't. One guy in particular really, really struggled tonight, and continues to struggle all season long. It's been a rough season for this guy that I'm about to mention. But, the pick and pop threes, the Pistons were, willing to give up every single time down the floor. Garza, was able to set screens on Derrick White, and then, sort of pop for the open three, and Derrick White would feed him. And he made a couple threes to start the third quarter, which got the game back to that close margin. And then pretty much stayed like that. Robinson responded to those threes by making a couple of threes of his own. And, the Celtics really struggled to get any good shots besides those pick and pop threes. And when those shots weren't falling, they tried different things. It wasn't like they were stubborn in this game. I give credit to the Celtics for trying different things, trying different shots, but it just wasn't their night offensively. And you add that to the fact that you're playing such a great team defensively, and you're going to get a low-scoring game like this. We talked about the bad shooting, in particular this one guy, and it's Derrick White, and he struggled all season long. I couldn't tell you right now off the top of my head what his shooting numbers are on the season. Maybe we'll talk about him in another episode, or in our next episode. But he goes 1 for 11 in this game, 0 of 6 from 3. Does get 9 rebounds, 5 assists. Does have 2 blocks in this game. But he's out there to be your second best option on the offensive end, and he just doesn't show up in this game. He continues to just take shots confidently, which you love to see, but they just are not going down for him, and that's really hurting the Celtics offense right now because Jaylen Brown's doing his thing. Anthony Simons has done great things off the bench over the last couple of weeks. Kata's been good for the most part, and you're looking for another guy to, on most nights, the Celtics have enough right now because they found some hidden talent in guys off the bench. Garza, Simons, guys like Shireman, who played well in this game and hit some tough threes in the first quarter, threes over some deep contests from guys like Jaden Duren, Cade Cunningham. We haven't seen a lot of Jordan Walsh as of recently. I'd like to see more of him. But that being said, Jordan Walsh is more the defensive guy, and the Celtics were just fine defensively in this game, right? They needed offense, so this wasn't the game you wanted to see Jordan Walsh in. But Derrick White, right? You're looking for someone to just make a couple shots and open this game up, and Derrick White was out there and had to play because of what he was doing defensively, right? Derrick White makes winning plays no matter whether he's shooting the ball well. But what you needed from him tonight was just a little bit more than just the defense. You needed the offense from him, and you just didn't get it. We mentioned Jaylen Brown briefly, the 32 points that he had on 11-28 shooting. Continues to get to that 30-point mark most nights. Some nights more consistent than not, more efficient. This game definitely not his most efficient night. It didn't look like he struggled throughout the game. He missed shots sort of in stretches, and then he would make a couple, and then he would, miss a couple more, and sort of very streaky tonight, which makes sense. He saw different coverages all night long. Cade Cunningham guarded him. Tobias Harris guarded him sometimes. Jaylen Brown made some tough shots late in this game to basically keep this game within arm's reach. Really within 1 or 2 points throughout the fourth quarter when it looked like maybe the Pistons would pull away with some of those threes from guys like Harris and Cade Cunningham and whoever was making shots. Right, but Jaylen Brown, he did his best to keep this game close late in the fourth quarter. And so, I don't want to give too much, hate on Jaylen Brown on this night. Yes, you would like for him to shoot better, but you can't look at him and say he was so bad defensively or offensively, right? You had Derrick White, who was 10 times worse. You had, Sam Hauser was good in this game, 4-7 from 3, but you had guys like, if I'm looking, Simons, 1 of 6 off the bench. You had, if I'm not mistaken, Shireman did go 1 of 3. Brown did, miss a couple threes. Pritchard, 3 of 6. Kata only took 2 shots, scored 10 points, got to the line a lot, but, he wasn't great offensively either. And so, yeah, that's really why you lost this game. You didn't lose it because of the offense. You did a great job, or you didn't lose it because of the defense. You did a great job on the Pistons all night long. You have to be happy with giving up only 104 points. The story of the night was the poor offense, and that's why you need Jason Tatum. And Jason Tatum, who knows when he's coming back. I have to think it's going to be in the next couple of weeks, before the All-Star break is looking at right now, maybe just after. But that being said, the sooner you can get him, I'm not going to say rush him back or anything, right? But, it's just looking like, these problems from Jaylen Brown, from Derrick White, from Peyton Pritchard continue to be a problem, and you need one other guy to, pick up the slack offensively, and that could be Jason Tatum. But, I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will be back after the next Celtics game, which I believe is on Wednesday they come back home, and then I do believe they play, if I am not mistaken, is it the Bucks that they play next? Or maybe that's later down the road. They play the They play the Pacers. I think they play back home, right? Yes, I believe it's the Pacers. So that should be another, easy win. Get back in the win column here and continue to just stack up wins heading into the All-Star break. Yes, confirming it is the Pacers on Wednesday. So we'll have another instant reaction after that one. And then, after that, we play the Nets on Friday, back-to-back against the Chicago Bulls. But in the meantime, we will have an episode coming out Friday or Saturday morning, I guess, in between the games, as that is the third day. So we'll have a podcast episode coming then. We might go live for some of these instant reactions as well. So stay tuned for that. And until next time, go Celtics.